Monday to everyone out there. Before we start the weekend, you know we're going to do it off great with another good episode of Let's Talk About This Way. Just a quick shout out here to the band Hannah out there in Simi Valley, California. A couple young guys doing some great things out there. Appreciate you guys for the intro and the outro music. Check them out on Spotify, YouTube, Bandcamp. There's so many of them. You can name it. They're probably on there. And thank you again for everyone out there who's been following along, listening, liking, subscribing to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It means a lot. I appreciate it. Share it out with other people. I think it's a great thing we're doing on this show, grabbing a ton of stories, putting it out there in the world, and seeing the different faces of success and different journeys that you can take down this life. Anyways, this morning's a special one, man. This is a family one with me. I have here Van Mago, my own cousin, and we're going to take a deep dive into his life, and it's going to be a good one, guys. So good morning, Van. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. I'm doing good. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. Good to catch up. How have things been out there? I know you're back out now in Cali?
Back in California, in Paris, California.
Okay, gotcha. How you liking that compared to Arizona?
Oh, it's much better. I mean, I was in Arizona for a few years, and it was just really hot. And I compare it to being in the Middle East. I mean, it was just 120 degrees.
Oh, man.
I'm glad to be back in California.
Well, that's awesome, man. This is where I'm missing the time of the year in California. I know California, some parts can get pretty hot still, but you nailed it. Out here, it gets so effing hot. This is literally around the time of the year it starts really turning up. I always tell people, you know what, though? It's fine. It's dry heat. It's dry heat. That's still not good enough. I mean, I go out there. It's 9 in the morning. I'm getting slapped already with 90-plus degree heat. It's just... We go through this cycle, Arizonans, and you used to be one, so you know. We'd have the most beautiful time of the year in the winter, fall, and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. 70s, maybe 80s, and then we get in the summer and we go through the cycle of why do we live here? Why are we doing this for like 6 months out of the year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Van, super happy to have you on. So as you know, you've watched a couple episodes, which I appreciate. We like to go in the background. We like to know who you are as an individual, and it starts with your upbringing, where you're born. Give us a little bit of your background here.
Well, I was born in Peru, in Lima, Peru.
Oh, okay.
So I moved to the States when I was about a year old. So for what I know is my grandfather's is related to your grandfather. I think your grandfather was his uncle. And so, being born in Peru, I didn't really get a chance to live here, obviously. I lived there. I got only a year old when I moved to the States.
Yeah.
So when I moved to the States, I grew up in a place called Thousand Oaks, which is close to Simi Valley.
Yeah.
I did that until I was about to begin high school. Then we moved to Sacramento. And then from Sacramento, my family just kind of stayed there. Yeah. So that was it really obviously I went to the military afterwards and moved around afterwards, but in terms of growing up, there was Thousand Oaks and then Sacramento.
Gotcha. How was it? So you said Sacramento, you guys went there when you were in, was it middle school or high school? Sorry.
The beginning of high school.
The beginning of high school. Okay, gotcha. How was it for you to transition to a whole different city starting high school?
Well, I guess I was kind of used to changing schools because I started out in a private Christian school.
Okay.
So I did that for 3-4 years. And then I moved to a public school. So I had to change a whole set of friends. I did not like that, but I got used to it. But then my family moved to Newbury Park while I was there for about a year. So I had to change a whole new set of friends again. So from 7th grade to 8th grade, I had to change a whole new set. And then when we moved to Sacramento, I had to change again from a whole new set of people. So starting out in Sacramento, I did not really like that change because I had to start over again.
Right.
To me, I just did not... I did not like doing that.
Well, and you're going into high school, man. Like that's like the time where you want to be surrounded by some people that have a good bond with, because high school, like in my opinion, it's a great time too, just with and you meet more friends and whatnot, right, from the other junior highs and whatnot. But it's also an intimidating time and can be pretty rough in high school as well. So I can't imagine that change. For the friends that you've had before you started moving, I know you moved around a few times. Did you ever stay in touch with any of those friends?
No, no, I never did.
Mm,
I never have. I guess I'm kind of maybe not as extroverted,
mm,
as some
okay.
other family members.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I don't really have um, a close group of friends that I hang out with. I mean, every now and then I would talk to some on the phone,
Yeah.
but pretty much that's about it, though. Yeah,
Got you. Well, I mean, you got us as cousins. I know as cousins we all talk quite a bit, so yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of the benefit of having that and friends. Well, being both. But anyway, so Van, you go into high school. Let's kick it off from Sacramento here, right? So obviously you went to a private Christian school. You moved around a few times. Was the high school public or was it private?
It was public.
Okay, public high school. Okay, so you go into high school now in Sacramento. Well, how was it for you in terms of school? Were you pretty good at school?
Uh, Once I started high school, I felt like I got serious about school.
Okay, fair enough.
In junior high, in elementary, I kind of really wasn't,
Yeah.
but I knew that high school was important because that's going to get you into college.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I kind of buckled down a little bit. I think I got like a 3 point something,
Okay.
which is pretty good compared to
Yeah.
how I was doing in elementary school and junior high.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel like I'm the same way with you, Van. I wasn't, high school took me a bit to apply myself to, but with junior high and even elementary, I mean, even when you're surrounded by some of the friends, is how I was. Just I wouldn't say necessarily a class clown, but I enjoyed myself, had a good time. Probably didn't take it as serious as I probably should have, but then again, we're kids. But
yeah,
high school, I mean, there it has to be a switch at some point because you're right. The grades at that point really affect what school you go to. And I don't know about you, man. I think one of the biggest regrets I have in high school, my freshman year was just fine. My sophomore year, junior year is where I started just, I don't know what I was thinking, just being pretty dumb. And I let my grades slip a little bit. And then going back in my senior year, kind of started pumping things up. But I really wish I had the insight back then to really tell myself like, hey, this is extremely important to do it like so well. Like you can have your fun, but you really need to get your studies done because little did I know how important scholarships were. You know what I mean? How much money you can save off scholarships.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm thankful that right now I've got a good job right now, pretty pretty well paid, and we're taking care of the loans. But the reality of it is, how much money could I have saved if I would have just applied myself, right? To get something scholarship. Like my wife got a scholarship, and it's just like, why didn't I do that? Now I'm over here paying my student loans still, when I could have gotten something for free, maybe if I would have applied myself a little more. But anyways, so Van, high school, you finished 3 point. Um, Obviously, we're going to talk about the military journey. So tell me a bit of your mindset, man. I feel like you wanting to go in the military had to have started pretty young, if not maybe around high school, right?
Well, I've always thought about it. I mean, I loved reading about history, military history in general, and then World War II specifically. I had a lot of books on World War II, so I always thought about joining the military. But when it came time to do so after high school, I decided to go a different route. So I went
Hmm.
to ITT Tech, and I got a associates in drafting, and I was just doing that. I was doing that job. I was doing architectural drawings and blueprints and stuff like that. Doing
Oh,
commercial
wow.
buildings and working with interior designers to just draw. I really loved it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
You get to see the blueprints, and then you get to see when it actually goes up. And from going from paper to actually seeing it is pretty cool experience, especially when your name's on the blueprints, on the bottom right,
Yeah.
drawn by so and so. Or so it's cool. I really enjoyed that. But then my whole, I guess, trajectory changed after 9/11.
Mm.
And after 9/11, the very next day, I walked into the recruiting station and I signed up right there and then.
Wow, man. Because that's what I was waiting for. As you're talking about, doing drafting and working on blueprints, right now on camera, you can see how big a crack of a smile you just had. You know what I mean? You cracked a big smile. So obviously you enjoyed it, you loved it. I was wondering what was the piece that got you going the other route. So when 9/11 happened, obviously like I was still pretty small. Like I still remember like it being on TV at school and that was the craziest thing and then our parents picking us up. But
Uh-huh.
I mean, for you, tell me, I'm sure it's very similar to some emotions that other people felt, but like what were the emotions for you seeing that happen live time when you're turning on when you have the news turned on? How old were you at this time?
I was 20 and I woke up to my alarm and I thought I was still dreaming. I heard on the radio, I was hearing something about an attack and I thought I was still dreaming. But then the radio kept on going. So I kind of just snapped awake. I walked into the living room, turned the TV on, and that's where I saw the whole thing that was happening. And I immediately called called my parents to come and see. And I know I remember my dad. He called my Uncle John. He called him on the phone to tell him also. But when I saw that happening, I knew that I had to do something. I just couldn't just sit back and watch those events unfold and not take part
Yeah.
of what was to happen, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's got to be a pretty powerful feeling because at this point in your life, you're doing this stuff with architectural work, and at this point before that even happened, were you already planning like, hey, I think I'm gonna? Was this going around allow along the route of trying to be a full-on architect?
Well, I know I wasn't, as I was a drafter, so I would need more schooling and more training to be an
Okay,
architect.
okay,
But I did think about it because it was something that I really enjoy doing as
yeah,
I get into, working with the architects and engineers. But I had only been working there maybe 8 months, 9 months doing that job.
okay.
So I was just getting, I was getting into the flow of that job.
Yeah, still within a year, still getting
Yeah.
it going. Okay. How did your
Mhm.
parents take the news when you said, because that happened so fast. I mean, were you just like, hey guys, I'm letting you know right now, like I got to do this. I got to sign up. Like, what was their reaction?
Well, I know my mom, she had told me before that if I was going to join the military, she did not want me to be in the infantry.
Hmm.
So she gave me that specific instructions. Don't join the infantry. So I respected her wishes, even though I chose a job that was equally as dangerous. I became a combat engineer.
Hmm.
So our job was to work with explosives, and we did the counter IED mission over there. So even though it was, I respected her wishes, but I still felt like I needed to be in a combat role. I
Yeah.
wouldn't feel personally. I wouldn't feel okay just being in in the headquarters or in watching everyone go out.
You want to do something out there.
Exactly. I wanted to be in the fight, as they say.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how can I ask you how many people you saw going to the were you the only one in the recruiting office that next day, or were there a ton of people? I feel like the call was set to a lot of people, man.
Yeah. Well, the next day I went early in the morning as soon as it opened up. I was the only one there at the
Okay.
moment, but the sergeant that was there, I think he recognized me because we had talked about it earlier before I went to ITT Tech.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember him saying, "Oh, he called somebody else on the phone and said, 'Oh, you know so and so? Well, he's ready to go now.'" And so we did all the paperwork, I guess, and obviously I had to go through through MEPS where they see that you're physically fit and everything. But
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Okay.
it was cool to just to know that like the sergeant that was there, he remembered me and he's like, well, I guess he is going to do it now, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is really cool. If let's talk about maybe for some who have never been through the recruiting process, right? Might be good info for them if they're just curious. What was the timeline by the time you signed all the paperwork, got out of the recruiting office? How fast was the turnaround time to pack your bags and get ready to roll out?
Well, I was still, I had returned back to college, so I was taking some classes.
Okay.
And they allowed me to finish the semester before I shipped out. So I signed up the very next day, but then I didn't ship out to basic training until January. 2002.
Okay.
So,
So how
so they
long of a
gave me
time frame was that?
so they gave me about right, 4 or 5 months.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, just because I was in the middle of classes, so they let me finish my semester.
Okay. Got you. So they let you finish your classes and then you shipped out. How was that experience? The first one when you got out there?
Well, I went out to Fort Leonard Wood,
Okay.
and it was snowing. And I remember someone saying, "Is this going to affect our training? This the snow?" I guess like the person was from California too. Uh, and the drill sergeants were like, "What are you talking about? You know, this is
Yeah.
perfect weather for training." So, but being out there for the first time, I guess, being away from family, you kind of, yeah, you get a little homesick,
Yeah.
but you're just so busy. You just right from the get go, you're just so busy with everything that you're doing that you really don't have time to think about it too much.
Yeah, no, I imagine with all the training, all the things you guys are learning out there, I'm sure your mind's pretty occupied. How was it for being able to communicate with family during that time? Is there a specific, I could be wrong, is there a specific time during basic training where you're not really talking as much to family or sending out any type of correspondences?
Yeah, well, you're allowed to write letters
Yeah.
in terms of making phone calls. They give you a certain a certain time to make phone calls. I think after a certain week.
Okay.
Um, but for most of the communication was through letters.
Okay. Gotcha. So you're in basic training, you getting through this snowy weather. That's supposed to be good for training for y'all. With everything that was going out in the Middle East and especially with 9/11, do you feel like they made it a point to expedite a lot of the training thing you guys did to get you guys out there faster?
Well, I know that I think they relaxed some of the standards because I know some of the standards you have to run a certain distance and a certain time. You got to do
Mm,
sit-ups at a certain. But when we got there, a lot of people, I felt like they couldn't even do the minimum.
mm.
They kind of let it slide.
Got you. Kind of like we
Yeah,
need all hands on deck.
but in terms of time, the time was still the same. So
Okay.
so basic training is normally 8 weeks, but because the job that I picked was a combat role, they combined our basic training and our additional skill training together. So instead of 8 weeks of basic, I essentially did 13 weeks because I did my basic and my combat engineer training at the same time.
Got you. Okay, so it's a little bit longer there for you guys. So interesting. Though they didn't expedite the process of training you guys, which is good. I'm glad they actually took the same amount of time because it's pretty important stuff you guys are learning. I'm sure to be out there on the field. They did. It felt like at least that they did lower the standards, meaning like we need anyone we can. So if you want to hop on out there, we have no idea what to expect in the Middle East. So let's get it rolling.
Yeah, essentially, they had a lot of people that were probably overweight for the position.
Gotcha.
But they gave them a little extra physical training to get them, in
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, just a little extra homework. That's all it is for those guys. They just
Yeah.
need it. That's all. Okay, so Van, you do 13 weeks of training. You're starting to get familiarized with everything you need out there. You got the routine being out there. After you're done doing your 13 weeks, how quick is it that they get you shipped and out to the Middle East from there?
Well, I get to my station, which was in Fort Hood, Texas,
Okay,
and there, which is funny because I always talked about. I tell us every so often that my goal was to be in combat, right? Combat
right.
engineer, but they sent me to a headquarters company. They sent me to,
Oh,
and I didn't like it at first because that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to
yeah.
be in the line company, they call it. And then they also told me, well, you know what? Because you're not a citizen yet, I was still a resident. They're going to send me away from the headquarters company because I'm not a citizen. There's classified information there. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I won't be here long. But then my parents called someone, and some congressman called me to ask about becoming a citizen, and I declined it because I didn't want to be in the headquarters company.
Oh, wow.
But they kept me there anyway. So I ended up going into Iraq with the headquarters company. So I got in country. I got to Iraq in mid-March 2003.
Mm,
So about maybe 6 months after my training completed, I ended up in Iraq in mid-March 2003. So the original plan was for us to go to Turkey, but Turkey denied the us to use their ports.
okay.
So we had to go all the way back around to Kuwait.
Okay.
Uh,
Gotcha. And you got there with the headquarters company, right?
yeah, I was with the headquarters company with they call it the division engineer. So it was a full bird colonel, and he was in charge of essentially our mission became to go out and just see what we can fix. The whole country was already before we even bombed it, it was already falling apart. The infrastructure was not not great. So our job was to go and fix it. Or at least the colonel's job was to go and fix it.
Interesting. Okay. So there's gonna be two things I'm curious about here. One, Van. So one, the citizenship piece. I didn't even realize that. I forget you were born in Peru, but I would have thought at that point you already had it. I mean, I'm assuming now. Do you have your citizenship?
Yes, I do now. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously you didn't get your citizenship back then because obviously you're hoping that you'd be sent away from headquarters company.
Yeah.
But how long was it after that that you got your citizenship out of curiosity?
I got my citizenship on my second deployment when I
Okay.
was in Iraq in 2006.
Okay. Gotcha. Because I didn't know this is stuff I'm not so taught up on. So if you were a resident of the United States, you could still join the army. You don't have to be a full-on citizen. Is that right?
Correct.
What classifies a resident of the United States?
Well, a resident is just someone who's legally allowed to be here, I guess, with a green card.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're not. They don't have the right to vote, though. For example,
Okay.
no, or
Gotcha.
run for president. I'll never be able to run for president.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. That's good to know. Just in case I like to think sometimes if there's questions I have on those things, people listening might. The second one, headquarters company. Could you explain what that entails? Like what is made of that company or who's a part of that? Obviously, it sounds like they're a little bit of the safer side, right?
Well, when we I guess before that, when we pushed up to Iraq, because we were going to Tikrit. So when we pushed up to Iraq, most of the fighting had already been done by the Marines, by the Third Infantry Division. So when we pushed up to Tikrit, it was kind of a somewhat safer route. I mean, there was people, all the Iraqis, from what I can tell, they were out there celebrating. They were out there waving, cheering. They were giving us the high fives and
Yeah.
everything. It was like a parade. But then we get to Tikrit, which was Saddam's hometown, and not so much, right? The people in Tikrit, totally different reaction, obviously, because we just took out Saddam's um, power,
Right.
essentially. But when we get to Tikrit, Saddam had a palace compound there, like maybe 15 palaces all around, man-made lakes and everything. So the headquarters company, we set up shop there in the palace compound. So we were there alongside other units. So we had infantry units there also, and combat engineer units there. So we had essentially we were all there together
Okay.
in the compound. So even though my unit, we weren't a line company, we were still in a, I guess, hostile zone.
Yeah.
So we would take incoming fire every now and then. We get mortars coming in, uh, people taking pop shots at our towers, or we had guards up there. Um, I know one time there was a suicide bomber. I don't know what he was thinking, but he walked up to a Bradley and detonated his vest. But I mean, a Bradley is a fighting vehicle. Nothing's gonna happen to a Bradley, So stuff like that would happen. Um, the headquarters company, essentially, we set up communications to talk to everybody in the area. Right. So we would be like the hub. where incoming radio communications would come and we would dispatch things here and tell units to go there, tell units to go there. As a matter of fact, General Odierno, he was a 1 star at the time. He would talk with my full bird colonel quite often. I would get to see him every now and then. So, in terms of my mission, though, with the colonel, we had a group of 5 civilian engineers with us. So we had
Hmm.
an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, just experts in their specific fields, a structural engineer. And then, so now our mission was to go out and go to the water treatment facilities, sewage treatment facilities, the oil refinery stations. So we traveled all around northern Iraq, going to these different facilities, seeing what we can do to repair it.
Okay.
What do these facilities need to be back up and running, 100% operational? So that was essentially, I became kind of like a security guard for the colonel. There's sometimes we would just be driving and then he wanted to jump out of the car or jump out of the Humvee and just start walking to some, I don't know, random substation. And I
Yeah.
would just have to jump out with him and follow him, you know? So it was pretty interesting. I felt like even though I wasn't in a line company, looking back on it, I felt like it was a good experience because I got to see a lot more than just one little town. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if you noticed this, but the way you talk about it, just because I'm sure it's was so normal back there, that's really crazy. When you're talking about, sometimes we have some shots fired at us, some mortars coming down. Oh, by this guy. By the way, this guy went up to when you said, what was the vehicle he went up to again? The name of it?
A Bradley fighting vehicle.
A Bradley fighting vehicle. What is that? Very similar to a tank, heavily armored.
It's like a one step lower than Abrams tank.
Okay, gotcha. So he really wasn't going to put any damage on it, but he just thought,
Right.
okay, when those things happen, because I'm picturing this and I'm thinking that has to make such a loud noise. Like, there's no way it's just like, oh, that's just whatever. Like, how how often were you guys, I guess, on alert with these things, or did it get to a point where you would hear these things and be like, well, we're fine, unless we like get told otherwise.
Yeah, that's the danger about being in that kind of environment for too long. You get kind of complacent, you know. It's like, oh, whatever's, you know. You don't run to the shelter as fast or I mean, when we were there, we didn't have any armor on our Humvees. We had plastic tarps. We didn't even have plates for our vests. Our plates didn't come until October 2003. So much later. And I remember some National Guardsmen asked Donald Rumsfeld about that, Secretary of Defense. And Donald Rumsfeld said, "You don't go to war with the army you want. You go to war with the army you have." Right? So essentially, but then when I heard him say that, I was thinking, well, you decided to go to war.
Right.
You chose without, and we didn't, and because of that, a lot of people got killed. You know, people that would
Mm,
go into houses, they would get shot, and because they didn't have their plates, they're KIA. You know,
that is
uh,
really wild.
our Humvees, like for example, our Humvees, because we don't have any armor. Now we have armored Humvees. You know, 300 pounds of outside protection.
Yeah.
But we had nothing. We had plastic, you know? So a lot of people I feel were killed because of that,
Because they didn't
unfortunately.
feel like they should have had the proper equipment when you guys were out there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's wild. Um, with all that going on, Dan, I gotta ask you, the especially when I'm hearing like shots being fired off, and suicide bomb one's still kind of the, I think in my opinion, the craziest one to hear. How much does that attribute to how you are today? I mean, the reason I ask that is I hear of, and it's a very true thing out there with PTSD. I can't
Mhm.
imagine. You mentioned like you get to a point where you see your gunshots and whatnot, you're like, you get complacent. Where like if I'm out there, the moment I'd probably hear the first one, I'm scounging around for somewhere to hide because that's an insane. idea. It's so insane for me to think like how someone can get complacent with that. And how that not affect you later on? I imagine you get. Do you have anything that comes from that at all?
Well, I mean, there's times where I would think about, like, for example, fast forward my first, second, third, after my third deployment, I'm back home doing my civilian job. I was doing drafting again, working on a Folsom Dam project. But then my coworkers asked me about my deployment, and I just I kind of like half jokingly said, well, my job was to look for the IEDs before the IEDs find us, right? We find
Right.
them before they find us. I kind of said it like in a joking manner. But then I realized, or I found out maybe a day later or a second day later that the supervisor that I had, his son was killed in action by an IED. And he had only been in country for a week. His first deployment, his
Wow.
first week in country, and that just really affected me a lot. Thinking that how is it fair for this kid on his first deployment, his first week, to be KIA, where I survived 3 deployments? That's not fair, and that kind of affected me, and I kind of just sat there in the parking lot for like an hour just thinking about that, and how sad it was. you know
Interesting. Yeah. Someone so young having the bad luck of the draw there within the first week with an ID, and you dealt with these quite a bit because that was your job. I mean, I wonder if that all stems from, did you ever have if there was one scenario you can think of top of head is probably the most dangerous scenario you've been in, where maybe it was close to you could have lost your life. Is there one like that when you were doing that job?
yeah, I mean, I have a lot. I mean, I think, like, for my first deployment, going back to 2003, I finally got out of the headquarters company. All right, I was like, "Yeah, man, this is great, but I need to get back. I want to go to a line unit."
Right.
And I had a sergeant major there. He made it happen. He switched us around. He swapped me out for a soldier that was in a line company. We just switched places. So I find out later that that soldier, while they were going out on their mission to go to the different facilities, he got hit with an IED, and he wasn't killed or anything, but he got a bunch of shrapnel to his face, and that would have been me. I was driving. That was my vehicle, right? But then in the line company when I'm there, they sent me on a detail to work with the fuel truck. So 5,000 gallons of JP8, and I wasn't the driver. I was they call it the TC, the truck commander, and we would go around filling up hospitals and the police station and tanks that were stationed around. But while I was there, the vehicle that I was supposed to be in driving, they got hit with an IED, and I was outside one of the bases when it happened. I was outside the base. We just got breakfast. We were about to head out on our mission to fuel up, whatever. And I heard the explosion. And I'm thinking, wow, that was pretty big, and that was pretty close. That means that the people in the guard tower, well, from what I was thinking, the people in the guard tower, they weren't paying attention. How can there be a bomb that close to the base, right
Right.
outside the? Someone was falling asleep or something. Anyway, that kind of irritated me because I understand an IED in the middle of nowhere. Okay, fine, but right outside the base, that's
Right.
ridiculous. Anyway, we get delayed an hour, and then as we head out the gate, we make the turn, and I see that's my Humvee that got hit. That's my Humvee, the one that I'm supposed to be driving. And I can see, because on the windshield we have the names,
Mhm.
the staff sergeant so and so and private so and so. And I saw staff sergeant. That was my staff sergeant. And then when we drive past it, that Humvee is shattered. That Humvee is gone. And I found out later that my staff sergeant was killed. He was KIA. And that was supposed to be the vehicle that I was in.
That's
So,
crazy. Man, that's crazy.
yeah.
You ever feel like that's just someone looking out for you?
And it's happened more than once.
Yeah.
It's happened more than once like that. On my second deployment, After you deploy for 12 for you have because you have a 12-month deployment in the army, and they give you like a 2-week R&R in the middle of it somewhere. So on my second deployment, I go on my 2-week R&R, and while I'm gone, my convoy gets attacked. Right, I have one of the gunners in the convoy loses his calf because that IED took his calf out, whatever. On my third deployment, same thing. I go 2-week R&R, and while I'm gone, the base that we were in gets attacked. The convoy that they were going to and from the roads, they get attacked. So it's like I put myself in a job with the intent of being in combat, intent of serving and being in there. But each time something major like that happens, I'm not there. I'm gone. For some.
Yeah, tell me really quick for the viewers and the listeners out there, the R&R you're talking about, for some of us non-military folks, what is that? When you talk about a 2-week R&R, what does that mean?
Yeah, rest and relaxation.
Okay, so you're allowed to go anywhere in those 2 weeks?
Yeah, you can go home for 2 weeks, or you can stay in Europe and travel in Europe if you want to, because we have military bases in Germany and Italy.
Gotcha.
And stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, man. I would have to say someone for sure up there was looking out for you. And then I almost begin to wonder maybe that's where some of the guilt lies, is the fact that it's like you're talking about that would have been me. That could have been, you know what I mean? Like on multiple occasions. That blows my mind, man. And like, one, I can't imagine if that's the thing, is kind of more the guilt dealing there, even though you have nothing to be guilty about, right? Like, how are you supposed to know anything's going to happen? But then two, like probably the other experiences in combat too that you've seen. You know what I mean? Like, how much does that nowadays? Now I know you're out, but nowadays, how much is that affecting you on a daily, or is it just like things that like will just sporadically hit your mind when you think when I don't know when you're going about your day?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a daily thing, but every
Okay.
now and then something happens where I just kind of think about that,
Yeah.
like like the incident with my supervisor and his
Yeah.
son, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Or just watching the news too, because now the news has gotten a lot of political stuff has been happening lately.
Yeah.
Military conflict. It's I feel like it's about to start ramping up here. With what's going on in the Middle East and what's
Oh,
going on in
it's feeling
Ukraine.
really ramped up. It's feeling really ramped up right now, man.
Yeah, yeah, and I just think like I don't know. It's hard to say because like the war in Iraq, was it really necessary? Were there
Mm,
weapons of mass destruction? No, there wasn't. Right, but I mean, I can't say that that's how would I say it? Not it's I don't almost like it's normal for politicians to just kind of lie and say whatever for whatever reason. Who
yep.
knows? It's the history of the world. It's just the history of humanity.
I feel like I could probably get in a rabbit hole with you on this, like no joke, about my thoughts about political power and corruption.
Mhm.
I'll just say this on this topic. It's not meant to be grim, but I think it helps to be real about some things. I think some would argue and tell me that there's a lot of power in voting, and to an extent, I do believe in that. Right? That's why we go out there, we vote, we go, and we obviously root for the option that best is affiliated with us, right? Or what your view and perspective is. But there's also this side of me that just really ingrained in me, in that these people in power right now, these political affiliates, people associated with these people, like they've been doing this for years and years and years. And if you don't think there's always strings being pulled on the backside of things with politicians, then you haven't woken up. I truly believe that, and that's what can get discouraging on some of these things. So now that we kind of touching on this, I got to ask you, from your first feeling going into the army, right? Obviously inspired by what's going on the terrorist attack in 9/11, to finishing your last deployment. was that feeling of what you felt being in the Army then different from when you finished?
Well, I mean, I read a lot about a lot about surrounding 9/11 in
Okay.
terms of politics, in terms of the upper leadership, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, George Bush,
Right.
was it Colin Powell, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And like I feel like I know so much now that the question is is like was it all justified, right?
Mm.
Now, on one hand, the answer would be no, right? We went in there on false um, information, even though we knew it was false. That Saddam was getting weapons of mass destruction. He had mobile biological weapon labs. All this nonsense. But when we went into Iraq, all the Iraqis waving and cheering us on like a parade. Because I remember that it was for hours and hours. They, for at least in that moment, they were glad that Saddam was gone,
Hmm.
right? Glad, and I could see that they were all cheering and praising us and hugging us and everything. It was like a huge parade. You don't get that kind of reaction if the leader was a nice guy. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Right. So, I mean, maybe there weren't necessarily the things that were talked about that were out there, but obviously he wasn't the best individual either if you have that type of reaction, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, so that being said, then I know you've done a lot of reading, Van. I know you're very in touch with military history and what's been going on. Can I ask you how you feel about, even though it wasn't justified at that time, that's what you're saying. What was your overall feeling of your time in the Army, though?
I'd say it was a good experience. I mean, I feel like even though maybe the main mission wasn't, I guess, real, but the fact that you're there to watch over your brothers in arms, take
Yeah.
care of them, make sure everyone's safe, I think that's rewarding, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, our mission to look for IEDs, our job was to essentially save lives because those IEDs, they're indiscriminate. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter if a civilian car goes over it or if a military cars go over it, it's going to blow up, right? So finding those and destroying them, that's a good feeling that we took something dangerous out of the fight. So I think that was a good. I think I chose a good job.
Yeah, I think it's very rewarding. And it also, you can also look at it like it propelled you to learn more about what's going on, right? You're now starting the military life, you're taking orders and you start wondering, what are the orders really about? What is it surrounding? What am I doing this for, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it doesn't make sense sometimes when they tell you to do certain things. Like
Yeah.
we had to go down a route. They sent us to go down this road because we wanted to open up a lane of I guess not communication, but supply route between one base and the other. But this route was very, very hostile. Let's just say that we hit like 5 IEDs on that route.
Sheesh.
And at the end, they told us, okay, well, I guess that's too many. Just turn around, go back home. But we're gonna send another unit to take over where you left off. It's like,
Wow.
why? And then as soon as we head back, because our equipment's already damaged, we don't have anything left in terms of like mine rollers, our mine detection vehicles are all destroyed. The other unit takes over, and as soon as they go down the road, we hear on the radio, IED hit, we got hit. Like, for what reason? We have helicopters that we can send supplies. So why are we
Right.
risk? And it doesn't even make sense because even if we do clear the route, they're just going to come back and replant IEDs later.
Yeah. No, no, I get what you're saying on that. Very interesting. My buddy Greg, who's currently in the Army, talks about a very similar theme right here, which is some of the stuff now, in his words, right? He says, I honestly feel like half the stuff's BS on what's being asked of us to do, and I don't understand it. And it's like no one is taking the time to question themselves on it. They just say, "Okay, just go," which is wild because you're playing with lives at this point too.
Mhm. I think that's a lack of communication is the primary reason why we have all these incidents.
Hmm.
Like even going back to the invasion of Iraq, right, in 2003. I remember being there when we shot down a British Tornado jet, right? Friendly fire. Why? You know, why? Because, well, they said that the jet wasn't communicating properly, that it was a friendly. Okay. Then I remember also when Jessica Lynch got captured, right? Her unit went down the wrong way, right? Instead of turning right, they went straight. They got lost. They got stuck into hostile territory. And then when they went to go try to rescue whoever was left, there was a sergeant that was left behind, right? He they left him behind because there was no communication. He had to escape. He ran from the vehicles. He went into the local town. Essentially, that was his last stand. Right? We left him there because there was no communication. There was no. So I think that is the problem: is the lack of communication, and so many incidents like that, like lessons learned. There's
Yeah.
lessons that should be learned, but they're not. All right. When I was in Iraq in my second deployment, 10th Mountain, they would leave every day to go on a patrol, but they would turn around in the same spot. They would do their turnaround in the same. Why? Lesson says you don't turn around. You don't create a pattern. You don't turn around and that you go take a different route. Turn around here. Turn around there. Don't turn around at all. You don't want to make it a pattern.
Right.
But for some reason, that wasn't communicated to them, and they would turn around in the same location, right under a bridge. They would turn around, and of course, an IED was placed on even more deadly. It was placed on top of the bridge, right under the bridge.
Oh, so it just collapses.
So not just collapse, but the blast going into the Humvee from the top
Yeah.
is more dangerous because the Humvees have armors on the side,
Oh, but
and there's
not.
no armor on the top. Yeah, so
God, man. Well, how crazy to hear talking about. Let's just put a time frame on this. When was your last deployment? When did you, it was that around the time you got out of the army? Obviously, right after that.
it was 2009 is when I finished my last deployment was in Afghanistan. So my
Oh,
first two were in Iraq, and then my last one was in Afghanistan.
in Afghanistan, 2009. Okay, so let's fast forward this real quick. It is 2025, and that same issue of communication seems to be persisting still, right? With my buddy who's talking about his time right now and what's going on. So, and you might not have an answer to this, and that's okay. But if communication is kind of one of the biggest issues right now, I mean, what do they do to fix that? How do you even fix that?
Well, I mean, I guess that's where training comes into play, right? I mean, not only training, but the sand table, right? The sand table is where you draw the map on a sand, they call it, and you put a little building here. You can use rocks or whatever and say this is the plan. You have to learn the plan. You have to know the plan, and I think that's what the thing is. People don't really take the time to really study it because
Mm,
they rely on technology now, right? Oh, we have the maps, we have
right.
GPS, which is great. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, you need to rely on your own mind too, on
Sure.
your own, yeah, and not only that, but things go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Things go bad. So, for example, we had when I was doing training and um, I'm trying to remember the place, but we had one of my sergeants. His brother was a officer in the special forces, and he came down to talk to us and says, "Okay, look at, I know you guys do your drills. You guys know what to do. Everything's great. You know, you can communicate on the radio and you can change the channels and talk, whatever.
Right.
I want you to do that now with only one arm. Tie your right arm behind your back. Can you do the same exact thing? Because the worst case scenario, let's say IED goes off and you lose your arm. How are you going to get on the radio, change the channels, press this, press it, with only one arm, right? So can you
Interesting.
do that? Can
Yeah.
you do that, right? Can you do that blindfolded? I mean, obviously, we're trained to assemble and disassemble our weapons so much you could probably do it blindfolded. Okay, that's cool. But what about everything else, right? What is your plan if something like that happens? Because normally you don't do training like that. You just do training. You're 100% good. You can walk around. You can do whatever. But if you take that one thing away, then
Yeah.
what do you do, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people, they don't train for that. They don't train for that worst case
Yeah.
scenario.
So it's just more so maybe just emphasizing on the training for these people that might start to help with some of the communication issues going on.
Yeah, I think once you have your plan, you inform everyone of the plan. You go over it with your team. You go over it from the top down, right? That's like the first lesson is keep your soldiers informed.
Yeah.
You need
Yeah.
everyone needs to be informed at all times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great start to it. Hopefully it's something that they do look into, emphasize that a little bit, especially with a bunch of young minds in the military, the one that probably needs some more discipline too. Um,
Yeah.
Van, now I appreciate your insight, man. I appreciate the experience and the information you have on your military life here. I want to fast forward now to being done 2009. You know, yeah, I know you went back to drafting a little bit, but obviously you're doing something different now, right?
Yes, I am. I'm working as a behavior coach, a therapeutic behavior coach.
Okay. How did
So
that
how I
happen?
so I got my degree. I went back to school. I got
Okay.
my degree in criminal justice with a minor in psychology. And then when I moved to Arizona, my first, I guess, real job after the military, I was working at a juvenile correction facility, a juvenile
Okay.
detention center. So just working with the kids there, just trying to provide them with some guidance. And the reason why I did this job was because I felt like my grandfather, right? My grandfather grew up as an orphan, and this lady from England, she flew all the way from England to Peru, and then when she was there, she went all the way into the jungle, the Amazon, right, to create this missionary, essentially helping my grandfather. So I thought, if she can do all that, if she can travel across the world to go and help some kid, my grandfather, I could do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So instead of using I guess my physical force, like for example, if I were to be a police officer, I would have a gun again. I didn't want to do that anymore.
Hmm.
I wanted to help, I guess, the same way that my grandfather got help.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that is a complete change from what you're used to out there in the military life to, which is interesting. You bring up being a police officer. I have plenty of friends who got done with their contract with the military, and then they went right into the police force. I feel like it's a pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but a seamless, to an
Hmm.
extent, transition into the police force. But you went the other route. You went with the route of helping out children, trying to be an example to them. And you went and obviously were at a juvenile correction center. So how did that progress to where you're at now?
Well, after juvenile corrections, I worked with the Department of Child Safety, which is like CPS,
Okay.
and then
Oof.
I
Was
went.
that rough?
Well, I did that for a year,
Okay.
and I wasn't I wasn't responsible for removing children, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was overseeing the cases,
Got you.
essentially for families to be reunified. We want you to do ABC, and then we can transition to reunification.
Okay.
So I did that, and then after that, I got a job similar to the one I have today. So I work with the families one on one. I go into their homes, essentially just help the kids learn some coping skills, help them release their feelings in an appropriate way, and then also working with the parents to help them
Yeah.
help their kids too. So
Sure.
giving them options, giving them, um, I guess, tools so that it can be, more. I guess essentially what I try to do is because I don't just go in there right away to tell them, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. This is
Right.
the plan. You have to create the relationship first, right? And I feel like a lot of the parents that I work with, like they don't. That's what's missing is that relationship. The common denominator for nearly all the kids that I've worked with, the common denominator is that there's no father figure in the home,
Mm.
right? There was two kids that did have a father in the home, but they were so busy. One was a doctor, and I think one other one was a lawyer. I mean, they're really, really busy, and the
Wow.
kids just want to hang out with the father, but I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. So the kids start acting out, you know. So repairing that relationship is the first thing um, I would try to do. Right? Let's just play some board games. All right, let's just play some charades or whatever, just to create those positive memories. And that's what I think a lot of that has to do with that. The kids want that relationship. The like the love languages. The
Right.
quality time.
Quality time's a big one for kids. I think it's probably the most reoccurring one you'll see, right? It makes sense. It's quality time, right? You want to be with mom and dad. They might be too busy. It's
Yeah.
interesting, Van. I was gonna ask you what the certain population was that you worked with. I didn't know if, for instance, when I was doing I was a case manager for a mental health center up in Flagstaff, I dealt mainly with Medicaid, right? Or is it Medicare? I always get the two. Medicare is for the elderly, or is it Medicaid?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
It's okay. Okay, but it's one of the two. You know what I'm talking about? It's the
Yeah.
obviously it's more of the lower income population, and generally I see that more so just because obviously there's so many other distressors in life when that type of household, right? Trying to pay the bills, trying to provide. But it sounds like when you're talking about lawyers and doctors, you're kind of on a whole different, there's like a whole range of populations you're working with here. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I've worked with kids as young as 6, 7,
Okay.
all the way to 17.
And
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 I worked in group homes, and I worked in foster homes,
okay.
and then yeah, I worked all over, all sorts, girls and boys too.
Okay, and different socioeconomic factors as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Wow, man. Well, good for you. I think it's a great route. I think it's a huge need in the community for sure, especially for children. They're supposed to be the future, and so it's just if those kids aren't getting taken care of or not getting help, it's kind of like what does that leave for the rest of the people to interact with them in society later down the road, right? So
yeah.
I think you're doing some pretty important work, man. Do you feel that this is something that you'll want to continue as the years go by, or are you feeling this is your calling, or are you still kind of you're happy what you're doing, but maybe you're thinking of other things as well?
No, I'm happy where I'm at. This job that I'm at. I mean, when I worked at the group home, it was kind of difficult. I feel like the group home is a little different because the kids are all together, right? So instead of working one on one, where I have
Mm,
their attention,
yeah.
they get that group mentality, and they start to act out. So I've had kids smash my car window,
Oh my gosh.
throw rocks at me, and I've had kids try to punch me many times. And it's the group home is different because even though my title was mental health specialist,
Right.
because the group home that I was working in, they didn't really have that much structure. So I had to be kind of like the disciplinarian.
Sure.
And that kind of takes away from, that mental health um, interaction.
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah, because now
yeah,
you're forced with one hand pretty much on how you can talk
yeah,
with some of these kiddos because they already see you as, like you said, the disciplinarian.
yes, exactly. And so instead of sitting down and talk to me about their day, they just want to break my window because I told them that no, you can't go out, no, you can't have food in your room,
Yeah.
no, you can't be in the office. So that's why it was kind of difficult working in the group home setting. But now that I'm back one on one with the kids, I think that's a lot more easier, I guess, or satisfying.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's good. I'm sure still none of the punch attempts, even breaking the windows, nothing compared to the deployments you've had. So I'm sure that was kind of like, oh, this is nothing really for me. Right?
Yeah, that's how I feel things are. You know, like
Yeah.
I feel like nothing. There's nothing really to really get mad about because all of this time that I have is just extra time. You know, like time that
Mm,
I probably, I'm just so lucky to, or blessed, I should say, to have all this extra time. You know,
yeah.
like I credit my wife too because my wife Elizabeth, because when I was going to school in Bakersfield, my unit got orders to go for their fourth deployment. Right, I was on my fourth deployment, but my contract was about to end too, so I had the decision to extend my contract to go on my fourth deployment or not. And I tell my wife, well, now that I met her, I didn't want to risk that.
Yeah.
So I tell her that I tell her that you saved my life because you're the reason why I didn't go on my fourth deployment.
Yeah.
You know, I guess things like that can change things quite a bit. You know, because who knows? Maybe I would have gone on my fourth and my fifth, and then who knows? I might have gotten hit or something. You know, because
Yeah.
I had a lot of dreams, vivid dreams about that.
Wow.
Like,
Kind of like almost a, is this gonna be deja vu kind of deal?
yeah, like
Wow.
I've had dreams where I'll get hit with a mortar and I see myself falling on the ground and breathing my last, like
Yeah.
everything fades to black, and then I would wake up. I had so many dreams like that.
That's
It
crazy. Like,
yeah, it's
do you feel like you have some of those still today from time to time?
yeah, I feel like I do.
Wow.
Every now and then I have a dream like that. I mean, there was one dream that was kind of related to the military. I mean, I saw, I don't know, I saw myself in a Civil War uniform.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's that's going
Yeah,
back a few centuries.
going back. Yeah, exactly. And I remember feeling that this is it. We're surrounded. We're about to fight our last. And I remember giving the command to fix bayonets. And I said it so loud. I said it so loud that I woke myself up by saying it so loud like that. So I've had lots of dreams like that where I'm in like the last moment where everything's about to go wrong, and then I would wake up. You know,
Gosh,
so
man, that's like subconsciously this like guilt that you still have with you sometimes, man. But I mean, it's a beauty to look at it too and say, I got all this extra time. That's what I love about
mhm,
it. And Cuzzo, I'm happy you didn't go on that other deployments too, because you're still here. You got a good life going for you, man, and you did your time. And I thought, very respectable life that you had doing that for the military and serving our country. So, I've always just had big respect for anyone who's done that. So I'm sure people on the podcast listening and viewing too have the respect for you, saying thank you for what you did for your country and your time, man. And now you live in this beautiful life helping out kids. And so as we're kind of winding down here, Van, two things for you here, man. I'm sure you knew this was coming if you watched a couple of the episodes already. This is one of my favorite parts of the podcast. We look at where we're at 10 years from now. Where does Van hope to see himself 10 years from now?
I hope to be retired. To be honest,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I currently have my own like t-shirt business.
Nice, man.
I do like combat engineer related shirts actually.
Okay.
So I've done that. It's gone pretty big sometimes, but then it's got its ups and downs.
Yeah.
But if I were able to do that full time, I think that would be nice and relaxing to do.
Yeah. Your own time, your own pace.
Yeah, yeah. It's gone good sometimes. I mean, I had a pretty good community, but at the same time, because when going back to like Facebook days, right? I was co-moderating this page with some other veterans. They had invited me to join that page, so we made this page. We had like I don't know over 100,000 subscribers or
Oh, wow.
followers, and I was able to advertise on there and make a lot of generate a lot of sales through there. But then one of the moderators posted something, and Facebook got mad, and they deleted the whole page, and all that
Oh
disappeared.
my gosh.
But I mean, I have other pages, but not as big as that one. But
Yeah.
it's okay. There's no, like I said, it's all. It's all good. No, no
It is
worries.
what it is. But that's cool,
Yeah.
man. I had no idea you had a t-shirt business. At the end of the episode, well, we'll talk about the t-shirt actually before we wrap it up because I wanna make sure we get the details too if anyone wants to reach out and order because the shop's still up, right? Online store.
It, it is. It's mostly military related, combat engineer related,
Okay.
but I could do like custom jobs,
Okay, cool.
all
We'll definitely plug that in the podcast details. So, Kazo, you see yourself 10 years from now, hopefully, you know what? We're not going to say hopefully, manifest it, man. Get it going. You're going to have this life. You're going to have the t-shirt business. Keep going afloat. Hopefully that will, I say hopefully again, let that be your main thing going on. That would be great. I think anytime you have your own business and you can operate that at your own pace and speed and what you want to do, that's got to be a beautiful life right there. So I like that 10 years for you. Do you hope to still be involved at all with any vets, any support groups, anything like that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I know it's important for
Yeah.
the community, and I know like the VFWs, with they have like the World War II veterans and the
Hmm.
Vietnam veterans now. I mean, I've never really, I mean, I think I've gone to a couple of VFWs, but I never really joined them as a community. I think having the community online, like for example, I have a combat engineer page on
Yeah.
Facebook, although I admit I haven't really kept up with it, but just to post there and have the group of people with the same jobs, same MOS to call it, just to be there to interact with each other and in a way you kind of support each other too,
Yeah.
because the community is important because even like I think I remember reading that people who go to church are a lot more happier.
Sure.
But the
Yeah.
reason is because they're in a community.
Yeah.
They get
100%.
together. They get together and they hang out together and they so the community I think is important.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's great, man. I think at least you have some sort of community there. That's what's important. So I love that. Let's talk about this. Let's before we wrap this up here, Van. Let's say we have an individual listening to this or watching this, and they're about to start their military journey. Let's just say they're going to do the same thing. They're going to go to the recruitment office, and for them, they're super just blue to this. So they're like, hey, we're going to sign up, and I want to go to the army. What do they need to know? What would you tell
Well, not all jobs are created equal,
them?
right?
Okay.
So if you want a combat job, then you're gonna get into a difficult I guess well I'm not say it's likely to happen, but it's you have to just be aware that combat jobs are different than non-combat roles, right? But they're all equally dangerous because if you're in a combat zone, it doesn't matter if you're a mechanic, you can still get incoming incoming fire, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I would just say just choose your job carefully because that's the job that you're going to be given and something that you want to do, something that you enjoy doing, right? Because if you want to be infantry and that's what you want to do, then that's great. But if you want to be a mechanic and that's what you want to do, that's great. But if you want to be a mechanic and you go in and let's say you don't score high enough and they say, okay, well, you know what, you can join this instead. Are you going to be okay with that? So
Yeah.
it depends on you. So you have that test that you take before you enter. Just do a little research. Study for your test, get the highest scores you can. And if the job you want is not available because you didn't get a high enough score, I would just wait, study some more, and then go back and try again. Right?
Interesting. Okay. So just more like taking a smart approach to doing this rather than just signing paper and be like, I'll just take whatever's there after taking a test.
Yeah, yeah. And then also, like for example, like my brother is a medic, right?
Right.
He did his basic training and then he went to do his medical training. But if he had failed the medical training, he's gonna get stuck as an infantryman or something, right?
Mm,
So I would say make it I guess realistic, right? So
right.
if you're not used to going to school and studying and you want to be a medic, okay. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it, but just be prepared because if something were to happen and you were to fail your medical training, you're gonna get stuck doing something else that you might not want.
Yeah. Okay. So taking just a kind of a, or like you said, a realistic approach really on like what favors you the most in line of what you want to do, right? Because I think that is a good point. And I don't think it's discouraging other people, it's just being real with yourself, right? Like I tried going back to school to try to get my prereqs for medical school, quickly realized like, no, it's not for me. And it's not even just like, no, I real with myself. It's not for me. So I think it's good to be real with yourself on these things. Van, all right. Well, man, I really loved having you on this episode, man. I think there's a lot of great insight, a lot of good information, a lot of a good look into that military life in the early 2000s. Van, any last minute shout outs for you? Anything you want to put out there before we end the episode?
No, I mean, I don't want to go off theme or anything. So, I mean, there's lots of things I would like to talk about, but I know probably maybe for another episode or something.
That sounds good to me, man. If you come back on, we'll do it. I'm all about it, brother. I think this is a good way, at least to start, though, to give some insight on people on who you are and how you went about your own personal life in the Army and now past it, right? Everyone's got their own experience. So for that, I appreciate you, Van. That being said, real quick, I totally had forgotten. I want to make sure we plug your online store. Just for people listening, if you want to let them know where they can find you a website, and I'll still put in the episode description afterwards.
Oh yeah, it's sapperzulu.com.
Okay, how do they spell that?
SAPPERZULU.com.
Okay, sapperzulu.com. This is a website here operated by Van Mego himself, his own t-shirt company. Check it out. Again, we'll have that in the episode description below. Van, Cuzzo, I appreciate your time this morning, man. I really do. It's good to see you too. And I love the setup you got behind you, man. Well, I'm looking at all the titles of the
Oh
books you
yeah,
got.
yeah. A lot of World War
Yeah.
history and history. Also got a bunch of Middle Eastern, I guess. 'Cause I took Arabic while I was in college too.
Oh, okay.
So just to have that command and control communication when talking to the locals.
That's smart, man. I love it. Well, Van, thank you so much, my brother. Hey, guys, as we are heading up and wrapping up this episode here, again, that is my cousin here, Van Mago, an awesome individual. Go ahead, check out his website there. If they ever want to connect with you, Van, if someone just wants to get some insight from you, is there an email that you want to put out there? You don't have to, or do you feel pretty good about just the episode itself?
Yeah, no, my email is sltw@sapperzulu.com.
Perfect.
Yeah,
SLTW at sapperzulu.com.
that's right.
Perfect. I'll put in the episode description as well, guys, for there if you guys want to reach out to Van for any questions you might have about his military career, what he's doing now, or just even about the website. All right. Anyways, as the outro music's going out, a quick shout out again to the band Hannah, some cool guys out there from Simi Valley, California, supplying the intro and outro music. Thank you guys so much for that. And for all the guests, for everyone out there listening and continuing to follow me on this journey, I really appreciate you guys a lot. Continue to like, subscribe, share the podcast, people who think might be interested. Just appreciate you guys a ton. With that, I'll let you go. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. Catch you guys later until the next one.